quick announcement, too, before we get started. Ken will be here shortly. He was becoming a grandfather, like now or any time within a few minutes. He said they're going to do a little FaceTime with him, so he would be here afterwards. Thought that was a good reason. So Ken will be here later. Okay, I will start with open forum. Is there anyone that's wishing to address the board? Okay. With no one there, let's go to number 4, approval of today's agenda. Look for a motion to approve today's agenda.
So moved.
Neil, any second?
I'll second.
Kim, second? All right. Any discussion on that? Okay, with none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose the same? Okay. Consent items. Also under the consent items, let's looking for one motion to approve all the consent items. Kim makes a motion.
I'll second.
Neil seconds a motion. Any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose the same. Okay. Reports. Dr. Funk.
We haven't quite figured out the arrangement and how we're going to arrange the room with the social distancing. That's why I'm in the corner here. So we'll get to it. We'll figure this out. But we felt having people on the corners was too close, so we added the tables here, and we'll figure it out. First thing I'd like to do is make a statement regarding George Floyd. As superintendent of Albert Lee Area Schools, I condemn the death of George Floyd that occurred from actions taken by the Minneapolis police officers. It is incumbent upon the leaders of our district, in partnership with our community, to establish systems that eliminate racist behaviors and provide equitable opportunities for our students and community members so that they can reach their full potential. As we aim for safe, healthy, and welcoming schools, we'll be examining our systems with our administrative team later this summer and our teachers as we prepare for our students returning to school this August. Thank you. All right, so speaking of summer, we have kids back in the buildings today, or back in a building today, so it was really an exciting day down at Halverson. We have targeted services going on in that building, and we also have extended school year. And how we're doing it is a hybrid approach, so students are there in the morning, and then they go home and they have some online work in the afternoon, and then another set of students comes the next morning and they have online, and we flip-flop. So kids are in school 2 days a week, and they are able to test out this hybrid concept. I'm talking about the targeted services students here and some of our special ed students. So as we look to the fall, it's likely, and I'll get to that in a minute here, but it's likely we'll probably start school, I think, with some sort of hybrid concept rather than having all of our students back. But our numbers so far, we've got about 80 signed up for distance learning within special education, 24 in person. We have 91 students registered for in-person hybrid courses through targeted services. And we have at the high school 209 students who are signed up for credit recovery through distance learning. Go ahead, Angela. They have told us that the decision may not come until July 27th. So we know how to educate in person very well. We have some familiarity with the distance learning concepts. I think what we're really focusing on when we meet with the administrative team here again in a couple of weeks is how we are going to do this hybrid piece, if that's what the directive from the state is on this. Some good news regarding COVID-19. We are receiving approximately $693,000 in federal assistance for cost incurred or expenses or income we did not receive as a result of COVID-19. So that's the back-to-school piece. Now, a number of times over the past couple of years, it has been brought to my attention by the board that we really want to take a look at two areas for the administration to take a look at. And so as part of our budget review and planning this past year and planning for the future, I want to share some of the board adjustments that we've made and will be making with your guidance in these two areas. Special education funding, which we seem to have a considerable higher per student cost than the rest of the school districts our size in the state of Minnesota, and overall district administrative cost. So go ahead, Angela. Since 2018-19 school year, we've had over $1 million that we have planned or are planning into next year for reductions. And these are just a few of them. So when we're talking about we have too much administrative overhead, we need to cut that, or we have too much spending within special education. These are some pretty intentional adjustments that we have made as a school district. You have your director of elementary programming. We eliminated that position mid-year last year. We eliminated the technology integration director without backfilling them. We've changed our middle school assistant principal into a teacher dean. We eliminated this year for the next budget a high school principal, assistant principal. We've taken 4 lead teacher administrative positions out of special education. And because we have a slight decline in enrollment, we have adjusted 3 teaching positions as well for this upcoming school year. But we are still within our class size targets. And then there's, I think, 7 paraprofessionals who equal 3-time full-time paraprofessionals for the 2021 budget. So these are just some of the reductions we have made within the areas of administration and special education. And again, I put the teachers in there to show our declining enrollment. While we've been doing that, next slide, we've had a lot of great improvements in the district over the past few years. One we don't talk very much about is our climate control systems in all of our buildings. We have 3,700 at least devices for all of our students. Of course, we've got the on-site clinic, and we've got daycare options for our staff. And the next slide. And if you look at a $100,000 house, in 2014, taxes from the school district were $427. In 2019, taxes were $433. So taxes have gone up $6 on a $100,000 home for districts of residents of 241 in that time. So I think we've done a great job of being effective and efficient as we can with our monies allocated to us by the public and providing the maximum education we can provide. And we're making adjustments into the future as we're solid this year as far as what we're getting from the state of Minnesota on the budget, but into the future we just don't know what it's going to look like. Thank you.
All right.
I have a couple questions.
Sorry, go ahead. Yep, Joe.
So as far as Hammerfield, I know that I brought up the issue that the signs were hard to read, and so they're thinking about doing the backlighting during the night and then maybe trying to highlight them during the day. So modifications like that happen to the Hammer complex, are they somehow incorporated into the referendum cost, or are they an additional cost to the taxpayer?
They're incorporated into the cost.
Thank you. And then for the 209 high school students in the credit recovery, how does that number compare to other years? And do we know how many of those are graduating the senior class? Is it high because of COVID?
I think, Kathy, you're behind me. Do you have any idea on the credit recovery numbers?
It's actually, I think, about within 10 from last year to this year, and the same amount that are making progress is like within 2 or 3 of last year. I think 146 are making progress, and last year this time was like 143. So Anna just shared those numbers.
And I'm not sure about graduation status. I can give you, you didn't ask this, but I think this is a good comparable question too. We typically have about 300 kids in targeted services. So we have 90 this year, so we have about a third of them.
Yep, Angie,
So
go
you
ahead.
mentioned that, I mean, I'm thinking I'm understanding this, but just double checking, for like the targeted services and the extended school year, that some kids are doing the distance learning, they like signed up for it, so how did that work?
Some kids have, according to their IEPs, are still in need of special education services, and their parents have chosen to go the distance learning route. The other piece of it is there are some kids that we cannot, we are not allowed to treat in service yet or in person yet by the Department of Education and Department of Health.
If we went to like a hybrid model in the fall, and I
Right.
know we don't know what's going on yet, but if we did, could that be a possibility that
For-
some families feel that online is
Yeah.
the best, the distance is better for them, they could do that,
Yeah.
and then the ones that it's not, you know, that didn't work, and they're like, oh man, we need to be in person, they can have that choice?
We, yes, as a matter of fact, that is, thanks for mentioning that, that's one of the things we're planning. We did a distance learning survey that we sent out to our parents last week. I think we had, at one point, there were over 600 responses. There may be more than that now. We're going to share those survey results with you at our July board meeting. But initial results after the first day told us that we had about 300 or 400 respondents right away. 80% wanted some sort of in-school or hybrid option for their students. About 20% didn't. So we are going to have an online pure distance learning component for those families that as part of our plans for this fall. And we're aware of that, and we're just figuring out how we're going to do it.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yep.
Any other questions for Dr. Funk? Okay, school board reports. Let's start with Dennis.
None of the meetings have been happening as of yet. We're hoping to get a couple of Zoom calls with the Business Ed Partnership. Everything else is kind of still just sitting out there, so it'll be nice to get some of those things going. The biggest thing, just as far as reporting from what I'm hearing from the parents with the survey, is there's a lot of parents that really want to see the kids back in school this fall. I think that's a huge, huge piece. I think there's a lot of parents that kind of have figured out that it's some hard work being able to teach and educate the children. The other one that I've heard, and probably a discussion for us to have down the road, is as we get into substitute paras and teaching looking forward, because of the world we're in today, the cost and the fear, some of the urgencies that they might have, if there's any maneuverability we have in that, taking a look at that. But I figured that'll be something to bring up down the road. But I just kind of wanted to throw that out there, that I was hearing that. Other than that, it's kind of nice to be back in
Nice to
person
see you,
again.
Dennis. In person.
Yeah.
Angie?
I haven't attended any meetings either. The Hammer Complex tour was really nice. The only thing kind of piggybacks on something that Dr. Funk mentioned is I got a community member mentioned like the cultural competence, and that just kind of seems like when you were talking about George Floyd that would be something to, I know that's a piece for teacher licensure, but to maybe make it a little bit more than just what's mandatory. This might be a good time to do that.
All right, thank you. Neil?
The Ed Foundation Committee has met, and we have been working kind of, behind the scenes. One of the things which was brought to my attention, Kim emailed me about donating to the Ed Foundation online, and there's some interesting phenomena out there relative to the foundation. For one thing, we somehow have two websites. One of them is a bit obsolete, I would say. I have no connection with that whatsoever, and yet it's out there, and I'm thinking that might have been the problem. In this particular case, because the issue was donating online, the website, the one that's, what is it, Ed Foundation, AL, it's
there's a link to it from the high school or the district page. That one works. So the good news is anybody out there who wants to donate money to the Education Foundation can do so with their credit card online. Seamless. Works like a champion. I know because I did it. And so that's one thing. The other aspect that I'm kind of involved in is teacher grant thing, and applications have been trickling in, and we now have 11, which is a really nice number because there's a $500 cap per individual and a $5,000 cap. 10 would be perfect. We could give 10 for 500, and that would be $5,000. It looks like we will not have any trouble funding those this year. I've kind of browsed through some of the applications, and I'm impressed with the people we have out there. They have some pretty good ideas, and it looks like some exciting things that they want to introduce into their classrooms. And so looking forward to reviewing those applications and making a decision on who gets the grants. That's it.
Okay. Jill?
I would like to make a correction regarding information the board received in a past weekly update. The update read that a board member may mention that they didn't know about the grading direction during distance learning and that the information had been previously provided. And the board discussion was not about that grading direction, which was changing an F to a no pass. The discussion the board was having that night had to do with going to a pass-no pass system in secondary. So I asked if the board had been notified about that. I was aware of the no pass instead of the F, but I didn't know that instead of ABCs we were going with the pass, which is quite different than just the F to a no pass. So I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't want that to be misunderstood in any way. I attended the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Other Drugs ATOD Committee Zoom meeting. There was a discussion about how many funds could be used in a meaningful way this summer. Because of the pandemic, we're not doing the fair booth in August, and so those funds are available for other projects. One of the projects we've been discussing for a couple meetings is the Mural Contest for teens called The Beginning of Something Fresh. Teens will compete for winning designs, and an adult painter will be enlisted to lay out that design and supervise the teens as they paint. And the committee is in need of building owners who would like their building to be one of the mural sites. I also attended the Freeborn County Family Services Collaborative meeting via Zoom. The collaborative discussed finances and approved funding for the mural project. The collaborative is also in the process of making some required updates to its joint powers agreement. We worked through that draft document, and the final reworked JPA is expected to be shared with the organizations later this week. There are two issues here. One is that once the legal review is done and the board approval, the board will appoint a designated signer for the document. The other issue is the amount of time required by the district to review the JPA prior to coming to the board for approval. The deadline for the JPA to be reviewed and approved is July 30th. I've asked several times beginning in February for what this review timeline would be for the district prior for approval and signature. The information was not provided me, so when the collaborative asked how long our review process was, I said I wasn't provided that information, but I did not anticipate it to be an issue for the deadline. Also, since board members have no power away from the table per board policy, I'm requesting a written answer be given to the entire board as to what can be deemed confidential.
Okay, Jill, that's fine, thank you.
Excuse me, what is the point?
we'll review that.
What legal grounds do you have
This
to
isn't
censor
really,
me?
you know, we'll discuss it. We should probably discuss that in a closed session, I would imagine, don't you?
This is training that the board needs to have, that if we don't know what is confidential, there's no, I'm not saying anything that needs to be censored here. This is transparency of government work, and the board needs to know what can be deemed confidential and what is not. Because
Mike, do you have any
I
Thoughts on that,
received
Ms.
an
Askew?
email from the chair deemed confidential, and I did not see anything
So-
in there.
This is board reports. Typically, since we have been doing board reports about meetings attended. Jill, if you have a concern about the chair, you can please share that with the administration, or you can share it with the board as a whole if you so desire, but this is not the spot for it, according to your past practice as a board.
Well, as our past practices, we do discuss board information in an open board meeting. This is, when else can we discuss this except in an open board meeting? So
Okay.
I'm requesting that. I'm putting that request out there in an open board meeting because my requests are not answered in a lot of ways when I email them, which
Thank
you
you,
are
Jill.
aware.
Okay.
Okay, moving on. I'm also awaiting answers from the chair from my email of April 30th, so that's 2 months. Waiting those around board communications. And my final report is I also attended the closed session of June 1st. That session was out of order.
Let's,
And I walked-
thank you, Kim.
Again,
That's
it
point of
is.
order. Closed session cannot be talked
I'm
about.
not talking about anything of context. I'm not, here we go again, confidential.
No, I recognize.
Point of order, I
Kim.
have the chair. I have
She
the,
asked point of order, and I recognized her.
oh,
Kim?
So in policy number 209 of the Code of Ethics, section 2, under F7, we as board members agree that we will guard the confidentiality of information that is protected under applicable law. In closed session, information can't be discussed at this meeting.
okay, may I speak
Yep.
now?
Okay.
And again, that is information covered under closed,
That's
under
right.
those
That's
confidential
why we
laws.
don't talk
And
about
so
it here, Jill.
well, when are we going to
She
talk
just
about it?
mentioned it. She just-
I'm not talking about confidential context. I'm not talking about that. I'm putting a report out that I walked out of that closed session. It was the first time in my
Kim,
14 years
Kim,
on the
go ahead.
board.
I'm recognizing Kim.
What happens at closed meetings cannot be discussed.
That's not true. That's not
Employee.
true.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep, Kim.
Okay, I attended the task force meeting, just an informal task force meeting to talk about, I think Mike's going to talk about the outdoor graduation. And so I'm excited to hear about that, and I was thankful that I could attend. And then I attended the Education Foundation meeting as well. Had to leave early, but there was again discussion about promoting that relationship between the Greater Albert Lee Project and the school districts, and we really need to have those discussions. So I'll be talking with the administration and things. It's a good time for the Ed board is going through some different people on the board, and it's a good time to have those discussions again. I think it's an opportunity for the Education Foundation and the school district to partner. So that's all I have.
All right. And I was able to be in on the outdoor grad ceremony committee also with Kim. We put together, and I'm excited to hear about that a little bit too. It's was one of the goals when COVID started was to have some kind of a ceremony when it comes to the kids. And we had a great facility to do that. Looks like the governor's opened it up a little bit at this time. And I'm also hoping that we can get back in full swing with the kids and the teachers in the fall. So that would be my report.
Relative to that, Dr. Falk, have you, I know the administration spent a lot of time during the summer planning, the beginning of the school year, including staff coming back, and are we planning on having the usual schedule of events with everybody?
Can you turn your microphone on, Neil? They can't hear you in the back, yep. Yeah, so the question was, are we planning on having the regular schedule for back to school? At this point, we are, and then if we have our big back together, we'll do it at the stadium with numbers, whatever we can allow at the stadium under the social distancing guidelines at that point. So we are.
So large meetings that will be held outside now, weather permitting, I suppose.
In this case, the entire staff, yes.
Okay.
See, we don't have student.
I have he emailed a report
good.
in, so I'll read that for him quick. Board members, with the school year over, there's not much for me to report on. However, I do, have a couple things to note. Although I'm not at tonight's meeting, I'll be watching the video as soon as it is available, so I'll be caught up on what was discussed tonight. I'm excited to see that the board will be receiving an update on the class of 2020's graduation ceremony, and even more excited for the class of 20 that they will have a better idea of what their ceremony will look like. I'm also happy to announce that I've been elected president of the Albert Lee High School National Honor Society, the third consecutive student school board member to be elected by my peers to this position. In that position, I hope to make sure ALHS has every opportunity to improve the community that we call home.
Thank you, Aaron. Any teacher?
I have a teacher text message. She was going to try to Zoom in, and I said, we're live tonight. So it's from one of our school nurses, Lisa Duggar. She was down at Halverson today. She said the check-in process went very smoothly for the students. Students were and parents were very happy to be there in person, and we had no issues at Halverson with the medical check-in prior to school starting today.
Number 7 is safe and healthy schools, nothing there. Number 8, curriculum and instruction, Dr. Funk, graduation ceremony update.
So as Kim and Dave mentioned last week, we had a meeting with the sheriff, with J.D. Carlson, who's the Director of Public Safety, and Sue Yost, who's the Director of Public Health for the county. And we talked about graduation, and we talked about our intent to host it this July 24th. So I want to give you an update with the board on where we're looking at for planning purposes. We're looking at continuing with our ALC graduation on the 23rd of July. And then on the 24th of July, we will be having a couple of graduations for Albert Lee High School. The ALC, they're not sure where they want to do it yet. They're talking about maybe outside someplace, maybe Edgewater, maybe they're not sure. So the class is part of planning it, so the venue and specifics on the ALC are to be determined. At Albert Lee High School, we're going to host 2 graduations, a 5 o'clock and a 7:30 at July 24th at Jim Gustafson Field. We're going to divide the class in half by alphabet with the first graduation at 5. If pandemic restrictions are reduced, we will try and hold one graduation event at 7:30 on the 24th for the high school. We will make a decision on that by Friday, July 10th. Go ahead, Angela. So here's some of the specifics, and again, parents will get a lot more information, and students. We're going to have the graduates park at the high school. Hammerlot has about 240 cars, so we should be more than enough cars available to park there. We're limiting, because of social distancing, 2 guests per graduate. We are going to have the bleachers roped off, taped off, so that we can have social distancing in the bleachers. We are going to provide masks for people should bring them, or everyone in attendance will need to wear a mask. We will have hand sanitizer. The graduates will be distanced on the football field. There will be no band, choir, or orchestra, but we've got music we can play with our sound system. The only teachers present will be the teacher of the year and individuals announcing student names. Students will pick up their diplomas as the board congratulates them. So basically, we'll have the diplomas on the table. Students will stand behind the table and, can clap hands as students walk by. Kim has a daughter graduating this year, so she gets the lucky thing of speaking twice. And the student speaker will also speak at both graduations. And Mark is working on areas for pictures and things like that. But we figure most graduations, when we have an entire class, we do in an hour. And so if we have half a class, we should be able to get it done less than an hour. And then there should be enough turnaround time. If people start showing up at 6:30, 6:45 for the second one, the first group should have moved on, or maybe they've gone over to the high school. So that's our recommendation at this time. Dave or Kim, you were part of that discussion. Anything you guys want to add?
Yeah, I guess I just would add that J.D. Carlson was there, and Sheriff Freitag, and then Sue Yost, from Public Health, and they were very supportive of the fact that we have started on a plan, and that they are supportive in that their resources they'll share with us that day and leading up to that, and are very supportive of making changes as it relates to what the COVID restrictions are. So that was nice to see.
just happy that we can get something going. I thought it was a very good meeting, and everybody had their input and came up with some good solutions. Thank you. Neil?
So I'm assuming we're not going to shake everybody's hand with the.
That would be a good assumption, Neil.
You could do the 5 o'clock and the 7:30, and then if things change, you might just do it all together. My preference would be to do them separate no matter what. I know we're opening everything up, but there's still more and more cases. We're not safe. So that, to keep everyone as safe as possible, I just think that's the better option, but I think that there will still be social distancing regardless, and I know the district will do the best they can.
I think the capacity of the stadium, and that's not even counting the field, is like 2,500. So I think we'll have a lot of space.
Has there been any discussion about inclement weather options?
Yep, great question. So is there another slide or not, Angela? I can't remember. Okay. Inclement weather, two thoughts there. They haven't opened up as aware, at least I'm not aware of it yet, that indoor large capacity type situations. So the inclement weather plan would be do the same thing on the Saturday. So we would just shift it a day. And if they open it up inside, then I think we set up the inside for inclement weather. So that's the discussion at this point.
And there are about 230, 220 Mark said. Is that student-wise? So we
That's if it, yeah. But he's got some in the military who are gone, and we're not sure if everyone's going to make it. So
right. Okay. No, thank you very much. Great news, I think, for the kids graduating. Okay, number 9. Effective and efficient operations, discussion of activities fees for the 2020-2021 school year. Dr. Funk.
We just touched briefly on this a few months ago, and we talked about maybe no fees for kids, and we really haven't circled back to it. And later this summer, we will be establishing fees for the fall. And so just had some talks internally and just wanted to throw this out there for the board to consider as a potential option. Because, if we went with a no activity fee option, I think we were talking about, that's about $100,000 in income that we will not be receiving if we don't do activity fees. But there's a cost for kids having to pay. So an option to consider for the board, and this, we're not looking for any recommendation tonight, but just some discussion perhaps, is what if we structured it so if you can pay, here's what the activity fee is. If you can't pay, you don't pay anything. And there's no proof, no anything. It's just when you go online and you register, you click, here's what and if I can afford it, my family can afford it, I pay the full fee. If I can't afford it, I click and I don't have to pay anything. And we're not making sure you're free and reduced. There's no paperwork extra. I can pay it if I can. If I can't pay it, I don't. And there's no stigma attached to it. It's just it's a free opportunity for kids who can't afford it, and that way we're still getting some income from folks who want to contribute or who still can contribute. So just throwing that out there for the board, and I don't know if they want to hear any thoughts on that or.
Yeah, I'd like that arrangement. I know as a coach, or former coach, one of the things that concerned me the most was that kid who would like to try out the sport or casually come out for the sport, or they're not an all-star athlete to begin with, and they know it, but they'd like to be a part of something, but then they trip over that activity fee, and that pretty much is a clincher to convince them that, no, I don't think I'll do this. It would be so nice if they could just, walk on and not have some overbearing burden that they'd have to come up with an activity fee to pay. But by the same token, I think there are some families out there that have the ability to pay that activity fee easily, and I think many of them would welcome the chance to, contribute to the cause. So I think it's a good idea.
I would,
Dennis, go ahead, sorry.
I like that idea. I'm wondering if you could even hybrid it a little more with the cost where it is. You get a lot of students that end up being 3-sport athletes. If we could reduce that overall cost back, I don't know, is it 150 right now or where it's at? If we could get it back to 100 or 75, and if there was a way to work with the Education Foundation or another group that could subsidize part of that cost to ensure that all students are participating, and then go with the idea of can't afford it, you check the box. Because there's a lot of kids out there that probably could be in some athletics but don't feel they're able to. But I also, the reason I like the idea was some cost in there. I think if the students, the families have a little bit of an investment in it, more likely to follow through and be a part of it. You see so many times if they have no investment, it's easy to walk away. They don't like what's happening, they just walk away from it. So to kind of add some control to it, but I think there's some good avenues to look at with it.
Just one other idea. Your guys' idea is fine as well, but could it be even if you can, this is the normal fee, and maybe it's reduced a little bit initially anyway, and then if you can't pay that, that's okay. But if you can pay something, pay whatever you can up to that. So maybe someone's like, you know what? A lot of families like, I could throw in $10. You know what I mean? Or I could throw in $5, and that would add up to help a little bit, and then they feel that they're contributing a little bit.
Okay. Jill?
I like the idea of something more along the lines of that as well. My first thought was that I know there are many families that will pay, and I think there's an opportunity for maybe some bad feelings to come in just knowing that my family's paying, and I know that other family could pay, and they're just not. It just brings kind of a sour taste to the process, even though we're trying to just make it open for everyone. I do like more of the, kind of a contribution, if you would, contribution toward the athletic or activity costs feels more palatable to me.
Congratulations, Ken.
yay.
We're just talking activities fees right now. And Dr. Funken mentioned it's just a discussion. He had mentioned a little bit about possibly pay what you want. And we've had some other comments about maybe reducing the fees down and trying to get as many kids active as we can. Any thoughts? I know you're like right off the street, so.
Well, I think we've talked about it in the past, and I think we're all kind of in favor if we can do something to get more participation. We talked about the numbers that have participated, and it's not where we want it. So I think anything we can do to try to encourage people to participate is fantastic.
My feeling too, just as many as we can get in there, find a formula one way or the other to increase the participation, and at least there's a lot of other reasons kids don't participate too, because maybe they do feel like they have to work, maybe they have to babysit, maybe they have to help at home. So we can't catch them all, but the more we can get, the better experience will be. I would imagine everyone in here has probably been in some activity somewhere that gains something from it, and that's what we want to do. Positive experience for our kids.
The only thing I was going to add was kind of along the lines of Jill, in that my concern would be is how is that information stored then, like if they click that box or they don't, so that how it, people wouldn't know that potentially. They talk, but they wouldn't know.
No, but nobody would know except the athletic office. That's it. All right, so we'll bring back to the board here probably in July then a model. I think for what I'm hearing from you is a full price model, maybe reduced, for one option. And then the second option is contribute what you can if we can set it up that way. And then the third option would be free if you can't if you can't afford anything. How's that sound?
Yep.
Okay.
Good, thank you. All right, 9.2, long-term facilities, Steve Anderson.
Good evening. Back again after last year. I don't know, can you go up with the other form first? Yeah. This is what we're looking for approval here, our long-term facility maintenance, and I know it's a busy form. It's really the only thing that we send to the state. But we have a 10-year plan, which is required. And it starts with health and safety money. They used to be separated out back 5-6 years ago, Category 1. And that's fairly even across the board for 10 years. It moves a little bit depending on what different things, like this year we're doing lead in the water testing, which is going to be a pretty good sized test. We test every faucet through the district. And there's years with the fire marshal. When the fire marshal comes in, we have to pay him $10,000 just for coming. And then he tacks on things what we need to do. So that's Category 1 there. Category 2 is asbestos. We actually have, I don't know why, that's for over $100,000. I don't have any projects that we're looking to spend more than $100,000 in asbestos abatement. Category 3, we don't have any of that. Voluntary pre-K. Accessibility, we don't have any 367 at all either. So we get down to Category 5, which is basically that's the facility maintenance. So if you go across, I basically held it straight across, kept it steady all the way across for 10 years. And it's broken down, you can see the different things. It's a very high level view. You're looking at building envelope or electrical, interior services, could be carpet or tile, something like that, mechanical systems, plumbing. We do have quite a bit of plumbing to replace and update through the district. Roofing systems, we are going to be doing a lot of roofing systems, and then site projects, anything outside, parking lots and tennis courts, different things like that. That's the high level view that we're looking at to send for approval to send to MDE. If you want to look at get down closer to see actually what's happening, that's the other form, Angela. And again, that's a summary, but there's 7 other pages, 8 other pages for all the specific schools, what's going on. I kind of color-coded a little bit for a high-level view, through the number of years. There's a lot of red there. That's roofing. We have windows next year at Halverson. That purple's PDU, that's the pool dehumidification unit. That's kind of running on its last leg that we need to replace before it goes out on us, and it's going to be fairly expensive. We're going to have to knock out a wall out of the high school, and it's going to be a big project to replace that. So I guess this year, you just saw outside Brookside, we were finishing up the Brookside parking lot that we had planned. We did Southwest and Brookside. Uland didn't get done last fall. Next year, our big project is Southwest Roof, which is going to start next week, actually. 2/3 of it. We'll do the middle section where the office is, and then we're also gonna do the gym. Some smaller projects we're doing, we're gonna redo the flooring, we're gonna put in a sport floor at Sibley. Right now in the gym, it's 9x9 asbestos tile that pops up, and it's pretty bad. So we're gonna put in a sport floor in there. Hawthorne's getting some carpet, and then Lakeview, we're replacing some windows, and their cafeteria is getting a rubber floor, kind of like Halverson's got. If you've been to their cafeteria, it's going to be very similar to that. So non-maintenance, it's been a good floor for us at Halverson. I think that's about all I have. If you've got questions.
So, curious, you have to knock out a wall to repair or to replace the dehumidifying system for the. Is that going to happen every time we have to repair that? It sort of sounds like an air conditioning arrangement. You have to tear the house apart to change it.
It is kind of bad, but yes, when we do pull that out, I mean, we'll make it so next time it will not happen. Okay. It's up on the mechanical. It's up. It's between the pool and the gym. There's a mechanical room up on the second floor. That's all they have is a single passenger door to go outside. And there's no way to bring it up inside, and there's no windows in there. So we're going to have to bust out a wall and get access. But there's like 7 other units in there, air handlers and different things that are in there. They're going to have to be replaced over time. So it won't be for just this unit, but it's going to make this one more expensive.
So you'd mentioned a lot of plumbing projects throughout the district. So will the lead testing, tell us a little bit more about this? So there could be more possibly, or is this kind of worst case scenario?
5 years ago when we tested, did the lead, we only had two sinks, faucets that were barely over the edge. So we just did a little changing in that. It's not really because of this. It's just most of our buildings were built in the 50s and early 60s, except for the high school. All of them were. So and they're getting corroded, and they're getting to that point where we need to replace quite a bit of our plumbing. We just had one that in this building that clogged up. You had a 4-inch drain that completely closed up just with sediment and things like that when they used the iron back in the 60s instead of PVC. It just corrodes and builds up inside in a drain.
Any other questions? So you're looking for approval of this, is that correct? For the 10-year plan? I think we do each year.
Yep.
All right.
We need to.
I would look for a motion to approve the, as presented, the long-term facilities management plan.
Move to approve the 10-year long-term maintenance plan.
Second?
Oh, I said it right.
You did good. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose the same. Okay. Motion passes 6-1. Okay. Thank you, Steve. Thank you. 9.3 is approval of the 2019-20 final budget. Jennifer Walsh.
Hello, thank you for letting me present. I did put in the board packet the book, but I do have physical copies here if anybody wants a copy. So we're going to start with, I want to start by saying that I did meet 2 weeks ago with the Finance Committee, so Dave and Kim and Neil, and we went through all of this. Good discussion, and so I think I answered their questions at that time, and
we'll see if the rest of you have any questions. So we're going to start with this year's final budget. So some changes from when we did the revised budget in February. At that point, if you remember, we downwardly revised the ADMs based on historical data of where we were at October 1 each year to where we end up a year. Because, well, I guess I don't know if it's because, but during the distance learning, we were able to keep virtually all of our students engaged. So we actually didn't lose as many students as we tend to each year. So I was able to upwardly revise our ADMs by 11 students, and that ended up at about a $71,000 increase to the general fund. When I was going through all of our revenues, they've started doing compensatory, breaking it up into more units than they did before. And I discovered that we had not reported about $95,000. So that was a correction that was to our favor. There is going to be an adjustment to our career tech levy, and that's going to be an upward adjustment of $43,000. I'm going to have a few things here in red, and these are the items that are directly related to not being in session the last couple months of the school year. So our activity participation revenue went down about $35,000. Most of our spring sports students had already paid, and so we refunded all of those fees. We had activity, the activity donations, this is just an accurate reflection of where we ended up. And part of these donations are due to bringing several of our what were student activity funds that really didn't fall under the definition of a student activity fund. So we brought them into Fund 1. We can still have the activity, but just not under the guise of student activities. Next slide then. So facility rental, no big surprise. We did not get some of that rental that we had in our budget because of not being able to rent our facilities. And then the biggie was our medical assistance, our third-party billing. We just were not able to perform all the different services that we're used to doing. And so we anticipate from what was budgeted that our revenue will be about $285,000 less than what was in our budget. This was in conversations with other school districts. For those that generate MA revenue, this was everyone's biggest decline, was not getting that revenue. Student activity accounts. We get a little confused with activities as in athletics and clubs, but this is student activity accounts. That revenue went down a little bit, and now that is in the general fund. And then in accordance with the new accounting standards, we need to bring our scholarships, which used to be in a separate fund, and now those are coming into the general fund. And so that had revenue of about $204,000. And then we will look at our general fund expenditures. Again, the things in the red were a direct reflection of when we did not have school. Obviously, we did not have the substitute costs that we had budgeted for. We did not have some of our spring sports expenditures, including transportation. They came in about $20,000 less than we had in the budget.
Well, red is good here.
Red can be good, yes. Red is good here.
No, it's not. Okay.
Yeah, red is good here. It's just, things that were a direct reflection of not being in school. Supplies, teachers really were great. We said that if it wasn't a direct need for distance learning, we wanted to keep those budgets down, and so we have about $40,000. And then travel, always, April and May are big times for conferences and things going on, and so just many of those things were canceled. And so we have about $50,000 worth of savings there. A change from the revised budget, Safe Schools, which is a restricted account. We added cameras at several sites, so that was an increase of about $35,000. And then LTFM is always a tough one because our projects generally span 2 fiscal years. A lot of the projects happen in the summer. We don't really know if the expenditures are going to be in FY20 or FY21. But just looking at where we were, it appears that our expenditures are going to happen more in FY21 than FY20. So adjusted that just for cash flow purposes. So what this all means is last year we ended our fund balance at 12.41%, and with these changes, we are now projecting to end this year at a 12.4%. So really coming out of some very unusual times, we're anticipating that we're going to keep our fund balance about where we ended it last year.
Does this take into account these 600 and some thousand?
No, no. And because we got that information so late and we don't know how we're going to spend it, that is not reflected in either budget at this time. We have until September of 2022 to spend those funds. They say we can spend them backwards for some of the things that expenditures we incurred. I don't exactly understand how that would work. I think we're going to have plenty of applicable expenditures moving forward based on what they tell us that we can use the funds for, but neither the revenue or expenditures associated with that, it's actually 3 pots of money, are included in either budget at this time. So then you have other funds virtually, or very little changes. Community ed, that final budget does reflect virtual closure of all of their programs. They're still going to end up in a good situation, with the exception of our Tiger daycare. It turned out we were only open for, I think, 2 weeks. We did have expenditures around that. There are several things that the state is allowing us to do with fund transfers, even within community ed. So we'll be addressing how we will handle that shortfall. Building and construction, just added some revenue to reflect some rebates and interest, higher interest. Revised the expenditures to better approximate where we're going to actually end this year. Again, that it's a little hard to approximate exactly when the bills are going to come in for those projects. What used to be Fund 8 got moved to Fund 1, the scholarships, with the exception of one scholarship that we have no say in who receives the scholarship, and so that has to go into a separate fund, a custodial fund. It's a new fund that we haven't had in the past. So I guess at this time, for this agenda item, I would ask for approval of the final budget, if there are no questions.
Questions for Jennifer? Dennis?
There's just one question. We talked about the third-party billing.
Yes.
What are we going to foresee happening as we?
Yeah.
I figure you probably knew that was.
Well, I've talked to so many of my peers about this when addressing next year's budget. You will see that I put in $111,000 anticipated less coming in for MA billing for next year. Part of that is I think our original budget for this year was probably a little aggressive when I look back at what we've received in prior years. So part of it is just probably getting it down to a more reasonable level. But for the most part, next year's budget, I anticipated a regular school year, just because there was no other scenario that I knew enough about when preparing the budget to be able to create that budget. This budget for next year, it was the most difficult budget I've ever worked on, just because there are just so many unanswered questions. So there is no doubt we will have a revised budget next year, just as things become more clear over time.
This may be Dr. Fong, but as we look at the hybrid model, those services that we do get the MA billing, I mean, can we try to prioritize those? Of course, if families. Of course, if families are comfortable with that.
Any other questions? Ken?
I'll make a motion to approve the budget presented.
Okay, a second. Neil, second. All right, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose the same. Passes 7-0. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you. So
And-
then, oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, 9-4. Approval
Then
of
we'll
the-
move to the
yep,
next
original.
one. So, as I mentioned, really a difficult budget to put together in many ways, just because I knew in the back of my mind that there were going to be many, many changes made along the way. And there's actually been some changes made since I presented this to the Finance Committee. I didn't make any changes in the budget, but I know that there are going to be some changes to this budget moving forward. But we'll start with, so based on where we think we're going to end this year, we're anticipating that our ADMs next year will be about 14 less, primarily due to what we anticipate coming in as a kindergarten class as opposed to what the class size of 12th graders who are graduating this year. So that 14 is mainly in the differential. We don't tend historically to lose a lot of kids through migration. So at this point, we were, as I said before, we were really pleased at how we kept kids engaged during distance learning. We certainly hope that our families will take advantage of whatever options are offered to them next year, whether it be the hybrid or in the case of families that want pure distance, that we can accommodate that. At the time of preparing the budget, I made the assumption that our federal grants would remain consistent to this current year. Federal grants, it's always revenues equal expenditures. So we don't bring, even if we brought in more or less, the expenditures have to equal that. So our assumption, and actually, since preparing the budget, they did give us our allocation for next year, and it is very similar to this year's. As I mentioned to Dennis, I did decrease what we anticipate. I decreased from the revised budget of FY20 to the original budget of FY21, what we would bring in for medical assistance. So I kind of met it in the middle of the 285 that we're losing and where we thought we were going to be, what I think was maybe a little inflated. So, but I got that better, what I feel better, and it's better in line. Dr. Funk has already gone through these, so this was really, it was a great process. It was a collaborative process with all of our administration, just talking about where we could make reductions. The staffing reductions really are based on class size targets. And in the budget are we had at that time identified 3 FTE paraprofessionals. Since then, we have identified more, so they will be part of the revised budget. And our special ed director has, just as we have class size targets that help us make staffing decisions for classroom teachers, Tammy has now come up with a model that helps us make decisions on how to staff paraprofessionals. And so based on that model is why she has now come forward to reduce an additional 4 paraprofessionals. So that'll be reflected. I'm just seeing, I couldn't see. Oh, I'm sorry, okay. And so the rest of these things we've already, Dr. Funk already talked about. General fund expenditures, expenditures reflect the settled contracts and the assumptions for the non-settled contracts for next year. We know we have a work comp modification rate that has gone up, and so we are anticipating that renewal actually isn't for a couple of months, but we're anticipating that premium is going to increase. We know we have a 2% transportation contract increase, and that's included in this budget. So based on those factors, we do have a projected fund balance at the end of next year of 12.04%. I would like to bring one other thing to your attention. Well, first, I'll finish going through these. Food service reflects really the information supplied to us by Chartwells. Community ed, we included what we anticipate with a full Tiger Cub program in operation. That is reflected in this budget and no other major program changes, but assuming a normal year for next year. Building and construction fund, we're assuming that that will be completed by the end of next year, and so the fund balance in that fund is projected to be 0. And debt service fund is simply revenues and expenditures that support our debt service payments.
Yes, Dennis, go ahead.
The transportation,
Yeah.
my worry there is depending on how the state settles, if they limit the number of kids who can be on a bus, or if we have to go with split days, what kind of cost is that gonna?
You know, again, I don't know the answer. It can be very frustrating. I emailed MDE today saying I don't see any real guidance on transportation at this point. You know, how many students are you saying a type C bus can fit? How many students a type A bus? They replied and sent me to the summer school plan that they put out, which I had already read, and the transportation section of that did not address the 3 questions that I asked them. So I will be following up tomorrow. But these federal funds that we're getting are for those exact kinds of things. Okay. So if we have increased transportation costs, those federal funds are there to help us support that. I think the bigger problem is potentially, you know, if we can only transport 15 to 16 would give us the correct social distancing on one of our big buses. We can't get all the kids to, even in a hybrid, even if we're only transporting half every day, unless we're getting kids to school extremely early and getting some students home extremely late, that's an issue we're still trying to grapple and get our minds around, and we don't have a great answer right now. We may be petitioning more families to bring their students to school. And that's something, you know, we'll be discussing here over the coming weeks. And hopefully, there's just been no guidance out of MDE on transportation. So hopefully, I'll get some more concrete answers to my questions on that.
No, I appreciate that. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Depending what part of the agency you talk to.
Exactly.
Answers.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So the other thing I did want to note, when you look at this slide here, and this was in what I sent you. In the past, we have kind of wrapped up the restricted for learning and development, the restricted for gifted and talented, and the restricted for basic skills. We didn't itemize those out separately. And it just helps me think better if I keep them separated because they are restricted funds. But what you can see there is, and this has always been the case, this is nothing new, that there are some of these areas where we have budgeted expenditures in excess of revenues. And so that all ends up coming down to the unassigned in that budgeted transfer section. Again, this is nothing new in the way we account for it. I just wanted to lay it out separately. I do think one interesting one, when we talk about special ed cross-subsidy and the fact that we don't get funding that fully pays for the special ed programs that we have, the same thing is definitely true with our EL program, and that falls into that restricted for basic skills. So we provide many more services for our English language learners than we get specialized funding for, and that kind of shows up there. So that is my presentation for next year's budget. Is definitely, I said it, I probably shouldn't even say this, but I felt like I was making more assumptions that I was having a difficult time having good justification for, just because we really don't know what's going to happen next year. So there will absolutely be revisions to this budget as we move forward, and we will just need to be very flexible as time goes on.
Okay, looking for approval for the presented 2020-21 budget. Second, Kim, second. All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose the same. Thank you, Jennifer, and you get another one.
I do. This is a big night for me. So this is something that I brought up to the Finance Committee. Couple of things with our fund balance policy. The first one, probably the easiest, is because we are required by the new accounting standards to bring in student activity accounts and scholarships into the general fund, and because they cannot operate in the red, my recommendation is that we add those two items to the things excluded from our percentage calculation. So right now, we have our unassigned fund balance divided by our total general fund expenditures, but excluding at this point operating capital, LTFM, long-term facilities maintenance, and the TRA, PERA, special funding situation pension expense. It's a one-line item. My recommendation is that we add student activities and scholarships to be excluded from our fund balance calculation. The second thing that I'm recommending is that we revise our goal from 14% to 12%. I didn't realize until the Finance Committee that it's actually been quite a while since we've been at 14%, and I know we've been very close to that. I feel like because this is where we're hovering, it's where we ended last year, it's where we're anticipating to end this year, it's where right now we're anticipating to end next year, that without having to, and we did cut almost $800,000 or made $800,000 in reductions to keep it 12%. To really honor our fund balance policy would require substantial additional reductions. I figure about another $800,000. So my recommendation would be that the board consider reducing that to 12%, making that maybe a little more concrete goal that we maintain. I can tell you that it is still a very conservative, that is still an extremely conservative fund balance. I was talking to my peer at Mankato. They are at 8%, and they exclude all of the general fund expenditures except the unassigned expenditures from their calculation. Faribault was at 9%. When I was in Byron, we were at 8%. So, and when I was in Byron, this was a question that we had, and I had done then a pretty extensive outreach through our professional association, and on average, districts that have fund balance policies, it's not even required to have a fund balance policy, but for districts that do, on average, they were at 8%. So I still think, again, this district has done a really outstanding job, and Dr. Funk illustrated that earlier, of having a very good financial management, and I certainly want to continue that great tradition. But I want us to be realistic of what we are as a board, we want to be fiscally responsible, but do we want to have to strive for a fund balance goal that is maybe higher than it needs to be? So my recommendation is to make, in addition to excluding those new things from the calculation, is that we move it from a 14% to a 12%. And we discussed this at the Finance Committee also.
I'll move to approve that and then speak to it.
Okay. Neil.
Yeah, this is simple arithmetic in a lot of ways. The concern, well, there is a concern that we have an adequate fund balance, funds available to pay our bills for at least a month in case our income ceases, which occurs when the state meters out because of their financial difficulties. We've all been there. So that a fund balance is a concern, but a greater concern, regardless of whether we have a fund balance of 10% or 12% or 15%, is that when 1 year passes to another year, we maintain that fund balance. Because if we increase that fund balance, that means we're spending less than we take in. If we decrease that fund balance, that means we're spending more than we take in, which is not a good fiscal plan. And I note that it's almost identical, the fund balance from the 2019-20 budget compared to the next year, the 2021 balance is around 12%, pretty close. So that means that we're spending about as much as we take in, and we have that comfortable balance. I think 12% is a comfortable balance. It's an adequate balance, and I would be very concerned if that percentage, seeps down over the years. So that's my only concern. I'm definitely in favor of maintaining the current balance of 12%.
Anybody else? Any comments? Is 12% just say roughly 3 months worth of operating?
And I did tell the Finance Committee, the fund balance is not exactly a cash position, but it is a reflection of the financial health of your district. So certainly, having a 12% fund balance is a better reflection than having a 7% fund balance. And it does indicate, to some degree, our cash reserves.
Any other comments? Dennis?
The challenging thing, and I think 12% is more than fair. My worries is with all the unknowns right now, by making a change now, then in September we get more not so great news, or we're going to have to come back and say, oh, we're going to cut it again. And from a perception standpoint, I worry on that. And I don't know if it would make more sense to hold tight till the fall to make that decision, or, the records are showing that 12 to 12.5% is where we're at. But I just throw that out because I can just imagine getting questions because of things happening, and all of a sudden we have to make some quick changes again.
Yeah, we're in uncertain times, and I think that we have to go with the best information that we have available at this time. And I guess I've always been like that fund balance there. Would not want to go below 12. Definitely we need to keep it there, but I think we just have to go with what we have for information today and make the best decisions that we can for the students.
Anybody else? Okay, if not, all those in favor of excluding, you said the new things. Could you repeat those again, Jennifer?
Yeah, so the changes would be moving from 14% to 12% and adding student activities and scholarships to the list of items excluded from the calculation.
Okay. Oh, yeah, Mike.
We don't have the fund balance in front of us. We just have your memo. We don't have the policy.
It's right there. It is.
There it is. Okay.
Yes.
That policy.
Yes, we want to approve the policy with those changes.
Okay. With no other discussion,
Didn't we already have a motion and a second?
Yep.
But I don't think we included all of that in that motion. Okay.
Yep.
All right. We're good.
good thought. All right. All those in favor of the
Could we just
change?
repeat the motion then, please, so we're clear that we're approving a policy?
Go ahead, Neil. Or do you want to did you write it down, Neil's motion?
I did.
Okay, Angie, you want to go ahead?
Well, the motion was to approve 12% fund balance with the two exclusions, the student, the scholarship fund and the student activities.
Activities.
I believe those two exclusions added to those things that will be excluded from the denominator in that equation.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Pose the same. Okay, pass 7-0. Fund balance will be at 12%.
I'll
Okay.
leave these, oh, I'm sorry, I'll just leave these books here if anybody would like a paper
Okay.
copy.
All right, thank you, Jennifer.
Mhm.
Now 9.6 is resolution designating the public depository and authorizing withdrawal of county, city, village, town, or school district monies and other miscellaneous public accounts. Jennifer, one
Forgot it.
more.
So this is, last board meeting, we approved moving our operating account to CCF Bank. This is simply their resolution that they require to make that move.
Okay. I got a motion, second by Kim. Any other discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose the same. Resolution passes. Thank you, Jennifer.
Now am I done?
You're welcome. Kathy, 9.7, resolution discontinuing and reducing paraeducator positions.
So the Director of Special Services has revised her model of offering special ed services to students in our school district. And one of the changes, in addition to the lead teacher model and moving some of those administrative support positions back into the buildings, is the reduction of paraeducator positions. And paraeducators will be assigned per case manager, which is a model that many other school districts use. And in doing that and looking at the numbers and the students we serve, this is the recommendation from Special Services. So it's a two-part action. One is to consider the resolution for the reduction, and the second is the reduction of the 7 least senior paraeducators according to their contract in inverse seniority.
Now, yeah, just for my clarification, so 6.75, is that like a 0.9? I know weren't they like 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, or is that, I guess it doesn't matter, I was just curious.
I don't have that off the top of my
is that-
head, but that's a good question.
Doesn't matter, okay.
Yep.
No problem. Any other discussion?
Yeah,
Andy?
I think it makes a lot of sense to kind of assign the paras to a special ed teacher. I agree that I think a lot of other districts do that. Just, my only concern is it gonna make it 7 paras more efficient? You know what I mean? Like, that's like a lot of, that's a drastic para change, and I mean, if everyone thinks that this is, you know what I mean, this model will work, I'm a little bit worried that, I mean, that's like a pretty drastic change. Are we certain that we'll be okay?
We have 105 paras this year.
Yes, we currently have
Okay.
105.
So,
That gives you a little
Reduced.
perspective.
yeah, okay. Okay.
How do you anticipate this reduction affecting safety of students and staff?
So I think one of the biggest areas when we think of safety are students potentially in our self-contained classrooms, and I believe those numbers, many of them are guided by IEPs, which students need one-on-one, et cetera. So I don't believe this impacted self-contained classrooms, which are our highest safety and certainly concerns. Good question.
Dennis?
That will be something that we can revisit as we go along during the year if we see some issues just because of the special ed needs.
Sure, I think as you look at the number 105,
Yeah.
where we're at now. Those typically ebb and flow with our students who have been determined to need special services.
Kim?
And the model is that's K-12, so that's not, it doesn't look different in elementary or at Southwest. It's all based on those case managers.
Correct.
E-12, sorry.
E12.
Yeah.
Yes.
How did I forget? Yeah, how did I?
Yes, yes, we do have paras in early childhood special education.
And again, this was not coming from my office to special ed saying, we want you to take a look at this. This was the special ed director coming back saying, here's a model that I'm recommending that we go forward with. So, we talked about the lead teachers a few months ago. Yes, that was clearly coming from me, from board director. This is special services. Our director, Tammy Elves, has said, I want to try this model. So we're supportive of it in the district office, and that's what we're bringing it forward.
So they do have inverse seniority and then also 24 months to be brought back from unrequested leave of absence. So.
Kim?
Yeah, I did ask Kathy about, my concern is during this time of additional potential mental health issues, that is this the time to be doing this? And then I think you did a really good job answering like the numbers question, and then also about the contractual responsibilities we have, so.
I think one thing, and we just talked briefly about it today, is when you do see the results from the survey, I think our paraeducators did a great job reaching out to parents. And we do have some parents saying, I got really reached out to by a lot of people. And so, kudos to our paras who were able to fill some of those roles during a very unique distance learning effort.
Okay, I would look for a motion to discontinue and reduce paraeducator positions.
So moved.
Have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose the same sign. 7-0 pass. Thank you, Kathy.
And so then the second resolution is the naming of the employees and identifying their rights within their collective bargaining agreement. And the reason for layoff is termination of programs as we go to this new model. And then according to their collective bargaining agreements, they have recall rights for 24 months. And then any employee who is a veteran would have veteran some actions we would take as well. And I don't believe we have anybody who fell in that category, but I don't want to say 100% sure, but we will check for sure.
Just a quick question on that.
Yep.
The people that will be, their positions will be reduced, were they kind of notified that this might
have been
happen,
notified,
that this has been
yes.
going to the board? Okay.
Tammy spoke to each one of them personally.
Okay.
Are any of these positions accommodated by natural attrition?
We have 4 additional retirements, and in addition to these 7, and then I suspect we will have probably a few more who've indicated so, but I don't have any further. So as other staff retire, we will bring these folks back or leave the district.
Okay, I would look for a motion to for the laying off of the para employees with their names listed. So moved by Neil. Looking for a second. And a second by Kim. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Oppose the same. Thank you. Okay, 9.9, resolution establishing combined polling places for certain multiple precincts and designated hours during which the polling places will remain open for voting for the school district elections not held on the day of a statewide election for 2020. Dr. Funk.
I think this resolution, oh, there goes the microphone.
Pull apart.
I think we brought this resolution this is probably the fourth time we brought this resolution for you in the past couple years. And tonight, it's another adjustment because the city and the county have adjusted their polling places. So scroll a little bit, Angela. Keep on going. All right, first one there, Edgewater Bay Pavilion. This building, Brookside, for a number of years was the polling place, and I think it's through maybe a state initiative or maybe just the counties, but they are pulling the polling places out of school buildings. So we will no longer be voting at Brookside or Halverson. So the new combined polling place will be at the Edgewater Bay Pavilion. I'm assuming that's the new pavilion over there. And that will be for the November election and moving forward. And then scroll down a little bit. Keep on going. The Assembly of God Church will now be the polling place for what used to be Halverson. And that will be at 1540 South Shore Drive. And once again, you know, we will fall in on the city election when we have, you know, we have I think a resolution for school board elections here coming up. Those will take place, but these are if we went on our own and did a combined polling, like if we had our own separate election. So I just said to Ashley, let's just get ourselves aligned with what the county and the city are doing right now so that there's no confusion on anyone's parts. So essentially, I'm asking you to approve our new combined polling places with the adjustment of the Assembly of God Church for Halverson and the Edgewater Bay Pavilion for Brookside.
I'll move approval.
Approval second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, the same. Okay, passes. And Dr. Funk, resolution related to the election of school board members and the calling the school district general election.
Yep, so this one has the filing of affidavits for the general election. And scroll down a little bit. I think just for the people who are interested, I think the dates are, I can't see it on this one, but this is the ballot, and this is how, you know, what it will look like. And are there two resolutions here, Angela? Yeah, okay. And, so go back to the top. Okay, so this one's relating to the election of school board members and calling for the school district's general election, which will take place in November, and we will be having 3 seats up for election this fall.
Okay, looking for approval for that, 9.10? Move approval. And a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, the same. Resolution carries. And 9.11, Dr. Funk, dates for filing affidavits.
There you go. The dates for filing will start on July 28th and shall close at 5 p.m. on August 11th. And the filing for that is downstairs in the district office with Ashley Madsen.
Move approval.
And a second. Approval and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, the same. Resolution passes. Okay, number 10, closed session pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 13D.03 for labor negotiations. Looking for a motion to go into closed session. And motion is second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a comment. I do not believe the people's business is being handled in an orderly fashion until we can adhere to policy and practice, proper decorum, professionalism, and civility. I object to closed session meetings.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor to go into closed session signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the same. Aye. 6-1. Okay, closed session. Work back up and running. Okay. All right, we're out of closed session and we're at number 11, effective and efficient operations. 11.1 is the approval of the Alberta School Directors and Coordinators Association master agreement for 2019 through 2021. Kathy?
So, the contract has been presented, in the board packet. I ask the board to consider for approval.
Okay.
So moved.
Yes, is there any seconds?
I'll second.
And any other discussion that we didn't have? Okay.
So,
Oh, sorry, Neil. Go ahead.
so for clarity, could you maybe run through which positions these are?
These are the Activities Director, the Assistant Director of Special Services, the Coordinator of Early Learning, Communications Coordinator, the Director of Facilities and Transportation, the Coordinator of Information Technology, the Network Administrator, the Executive Assistant to the Superintendent and the School Board, Human Resources and MARS Coordinator, and the Business Services Coordinator.
And the, oh, go ahead, sorry.
And my comment would be that in these uncertain times, I am not in favor of large increases.
Okay. Did you want to just mention the ones that were in the directors and coordinators too, since that's what we're going through in the first one?
Those are the ones I just read.
You gave all of them, though?
Yep, those are
All three of them? Okay.
That's just the directors and coordinators.
Okay, gotcha, okay. All right, no other discussion. Looking for, we got a first and a second for approval. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Pose the same sign?
Aye.
Okay, 6-1.
I ask the board consider for approval the Albert Lee Area Schools Managers Association. This consists of the Activities Director, Administrative Assistant, and the Food Service Manager at the high school. Both are at the high school.
Thank you. Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Oh, so Neil, did you?
Yep, Neil and then Kim.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the approval to approve the master contract signify by saying aye. 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 Oppose the same sign. And then 11.3 is approval of the Alberta Schools Technical Employees Association 2019-2021 master agreement.
These are 3 technicians, 2 PC LAN technicians, and 1 mobile device specialist.
Okay. Looking for approval for that contract?
So moved.
Got a motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
And a second, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Oppose the same sign?
Thank you.
Passes. Okay, thank you, gals. Thank you for hanging around for the meeting, everyone, and meeting's adjourned.